Hello, my name is Paul Katz. I'm the Chief Software Architect at LimeLeap Solutions. And in this video blog post, I thought I'd go over the differences between SharePoint and LeapSeed. Quite often, both staff members and customers will ask us, well, I have a new type of information to track. Which tool should I use? And, this comes up, one, because they're both very similar. They're both good at organizing information. And they both have, security permission setups, history tracking, visual design customability. Really, a lot of the features are similar. The primary difference is relatively straightforward, though. SharePoint primarily manages information it manages using documents, and LeapSeed uses databases to manage and organize its information. So really, when you get down to which tool to use, it's not necessarily whether SharePoint's better than LeapSeed or whether LeapSeed is better than SharePoint. It really comes down to which type of a storage format you really need to use for your documents or your information. So why don't we go into the advantages of documents first? So with a document, of course, you can work with it offline. You might have SharePoint hosted in a cloud somewhere, and you might download a template, fill it out, maybe add in some things, change the formatting, change the structure. And then when you're done with it, you upload it back into SharePoint. So you can work with it offline. You can work with it on Airplane. And there's a lot of flexibility with a document to express what a user might want to express. As I said earlier, you really can change a bunch of things about a document. With Excel, you might be able to lock down certain things more than others, but really users still have a great flexibility to change the content of what's in a document and the structuring of a document. So what are the disadvantages of documents? Well, one is that if you're looking for uniformity, you really want to make sure certain information gets filled out. You want to make sure that users just don't invent new types of information to track. Well, documents aren't really great at locking down structure. Especially for Microsoft Word, a user might add in some new sections, and really, if you're looking for document 1 to be the same as document 2, that's hard to impose over Word documents or Excel documents or things of that nature. At the same time, the other disadvantage really is that there's not really a consistent way of reporting across documents. Let's say you have this document, you might have an Excel sheet, another one here. Really, there isn't a good way of universally querying each one of these to find a particular piece of information. Let's times this by 10,000. Let's say you have 10,000 documents in SharePoint, and let's say they're all invoices, and you want to say, well, how much money did we spend over the last 6 months? Well, if the documents are, say, in Microsoft Word format, the information might not even be pullable, and even if it is, being able to pull in, say, 6,000 of these documents and compute the total, that can be time intensive, and most likely we'll have to write some custom script or code to do that. So uniformity and reportability across documents is somewhat of an issue. So now let's go into the advantages of databases. So one of the advantages of databases is standardized information entry. You might have a label, you have an input box, label, input box. You might have a sub-record grid. Have some labels up here, then have some input boxes, and really you can control what information the user enters or doesn't enter. You can make certain ones required. You can really impose a lot of rules that make sure the information you're getting is good information. The other advantages of databases is inherently you can run searches by field. So let's say this field was like last name. On a database search screen, you could type in, I want to search last name, and I'm searching for Smith, and you could get search results of all the records you were searching for. So field-by-field search capability is something that you can really do well with databases. There is some emerging document technologies to do that, but in general, that type of technology it really doesn't match the speed or performance of a database setup. The other advantage as well is, and this comes in tandem with search, is it's easy to run reporting across multiple database records. So let's say you have 10,000 database records, and let's say this was in fact an invoice, first name, last name, items purchased. Let's say this was the price of each item. You could run a calculation across let's say the 20,000 numbers that are in here and get a result back in maybe 2 seconds. So really, as far as being able to do field-by-field search, reporting, databases are really just superior to that of documents. So what are the disadvantages to using a database? Well, one of the disadvantages is that the users have the fields that they have. If one of them says, "Hey, I need another new field to track information," usually you'd go to the developer of the database and you'd say, "Hey, I need a new field. Can you add it?" And it's put to a vote, and it takes a while for that to happen. Primarily because databases, you have a uniform input, but the sacrifice there is really the users must work within that framework. The other disadvantage is that if you're using a database that is in the cloud, so let's say this is the cloud, and this is your PC. I like laptops, so I'll draw laptops. You need to always be connected to the internet to actually work with the database. Now, more and more, this is becoming less of an issue. There's over-the-air internet. There's Wi-Fi. If you're in an office, you're most likely connected. You have an internet connection somehow. But admittedly, that if you're in an airplane, you might not be able to access your database almost immediately. Although there are some emerging services now that actually let you use the internet in flight. So let's talk about a couple scenarios for each one. Let's say you have, a committee that needs to organize its information. So, they have minutes, they might have some proposals in there, they might have some briefings. And really, reporting across all the different documents really isn't important. Most of it is text anyway. There's not really any need to measure certain numbers in the documents. And, you might have committee 2, second committee, and they have their own documents. And committee 3, they have their own documents. And in this scenario, SharePoint is probably going to be a really good solution. You can create sub-websites for each of your committees. They can have their own document spaces. And, you're not going to be able to report across information from C1 into C2. There's not going to be a really good way of doing reporting across these 3 different sub-websites. But really, for committee organizations, that's probably not that important. You probably don't need to. So let's look at a scenario where LeapSeed might be a good idea. And this is a scenario we deal with a lot. Let's say in databases that manage people, and we've seen a lot of this. Organizations that work with say, disadvantaged adults or children using some of the stimulus funding. So let's say, service databases. So, you might have a database record that keeps track of the first name, the last name, and then you might have different database records corresponding to the different services you're offering them. Or, sub records that contain different types of information forms that store information in databases. Why is this helpful? Well, with service organizations, they have a lot of reporting requirements. They do. If they service, let's say 3,000 individuals, and they're using funding and grants to do that, the organizations providing the funding might come back and say, well, how are you using our resources to help people? How many of a certain type of service have you granted? So it's really important to be able to run a query and say, well, over the last 6 months, we've granted, say, 300 instances of this service, and here are the results. Databases provide measurability for services delivered, whereas if you're storing information in a document structure, you might have the same type of organizational advantages. You know where your information is, but the measurability of that information and the ability to report across it might be difficult to manage. So really, summarizing, there isn't really a major difference between. Well, I should say SharePoint and LeapSeed. One isn't better than the other. SharePoint is good at managing documents. LeapSeed is good at managing database records. It really is a matter of how your reportability needs and your portability needs. And the need to be flexible here versus your ability to be measurable and reportable and searchable. So I hope this presentation has been helpful. If you want to, if you have any more questions, you can email me at pcats@limeleap.com. Again, thank you for watching, and I hope this information has been helpful.